All right, so there are two really big sports stories going on in the state at taping time. John Pearson is out with the Westport Little League team in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and then we have the tennis tournament. I want to get your guys' thoughts on the New Haven Open, formerly the Pilot Pen, because for me it's always been a great event. I've always enjoyed covering it, but let's face it, times are tough these days, and they haven't been able to get that title sponsor.
And that's what they're looking for now. They have some cornerstone sponsors, which they really tried to grab onto 3 years ago, but their time is up. Now they're already starting to talk to them. What's interesting about this is New Haven is about to have a new mayor. Yale has now a new president. So they're starting to talk to them. And how do they feel about the tournament? How do we feel about it state-wise? Is it a big enough deal to put money into it? Is it a big enough deal for New Haven? We think the answer is yes, but it's been really tough trying to get that title sponsor.
I think the bottom line is Yale. Does Yale want it? Is Yale getting enough bang for their buck the last couple of years? They have a new president who the rumor is supposedly is a sports fan, whereas
we know he's a musician, so.
But I think it all depends on Yale. If they say let's do it again, then it's going to happen. If not, I think.
But it's not just the money just can't come from Yale.
But usually when they want something, they get what they want.
Oh, that's right.
In New Haven.
And it is right there on Yale's campus. Here's my thought: is that things are cyclical, and right now women's tennis overall is on a downslope.
Because, and why do you say that?
Well, just because there aren't any athletes in women's tennis right now, with the exception of Serena Williams, who transcend the sport, who people are going to go just to see them.
Personalities, you're talking about?
Personalities
Star
are just
power.
big stars in the game. You go back 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago, and there were several of those big stars in women's tennis, more so than in men's tennis. And now we're going through a cycle where you could bump into probably 5 of the 7 top players in the world and not know who they are. They're great tennis players, but they just aren't big stars. So, right, the defending champ of this tournament is Petra Kvitova. Most people wouldn't know her if they bumped into Petra Kvitova. The #1 seed in the tournament, who was eliminated in her first match of the tournament, Sarah Irani, played well at Wimbledon. I mean, no one would know who she is either. And I think that's the problem right now. If Serena Williams were here this year, there'd be a ton of people there. And so the sport needs an infusion of new big stars. It just hasn't had it for a while.
And even the veterans they missed, the Lindsay Davenports of the world who, you know, the average fan could see them.
What is the tennis world not doing to give these tournaments what they need?
Well, I think
do they need to start
tennis,
growing them at a younger age?
Well,
I mean, how do you know you're going to get a personality?
You know, that's why I think it's cyclical. You know what I mean? Pete Sampras only comes along so often.
Andre Agassi.
Andre Agassi, right? People would go out to see these players. And on the women's side of things, people would go out and see Steffi Graf. If you saw Steffi Graf in the street, you would know her. If you weren't a tennis fan, you would know her, and you'd be like, oh my, she's a big star. We don't have, and so I think eventually it will just happen, and maybe women's tennis needs to do a better job of marketing its players.
Well, speaking of marketing, I think that Ann Worcester, the tournament director, is doing a lot. So instead of the 13,000 seat stadium, which we have there, and it looked empty, and she said, I got tired of saying, oh, it's empty, it's empty. So she's brought everybody down now to 5,500 square feet to make it more intimate, you know, real tennis up close. She's done that with some of the nearby shops and the eating to try to make it an intimate. So I think that she's pulling out all the stops to make this as enjoyable for folks as she possibly can.
I think you've got to kind of hold it together until you get that infusion of young stars. You know what I mean? You've got to kind of keep people. Like golf did.
Hold the tournament together.
The Travelers, and then Travelers came in, and I think Travelers gets a lot of bang for their buck. Look, we have more to talk about on this?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, because we've run out of time here on television. So we'll talk more about it over on SportsEdge.com. You know, a lot of times when you get lemonade, you buy lemonade, or you make it out of it doesn't even have real lemons in it. So our fitness contributor, our wellness contributor, is going to talk about a way to solve that problem. Talk about a segue.
What a segue, right?
That's coming up here on TV. For the rest of this conversation about tennis, go to SportsEdge.com. All right, where were we?
Okay, let's talk about title sponsors. Who could come in, do you think, and really grab this thing for the next 3 to 5 years and be a title sponsor? Because they're talking to everybody. Now, First Niagara is a sponsor, a big
presenting sponsor.
Presenting sponsor. So, but times are tough, as you say. So, is it a bank? You know, is it Yale? Who could be this title sponsor? And I'm sure they would, you know, like to have it before this tournament ends.
I think the tournament would be happy if it were, you know, Joe Schmo. I don't think
Just
they
sign
care
the
who
check.
it is. They just want the money. So who, you know, personally, I think the Travelers would do well they'd have the whole summer, because this tournament gets a lot of television time.
Sure.
So today's action was on the Tennis Channel. Tomorrow's action will be on ESPN. So there's a lot of national coverage for this tournament, especially because there's some excitement leading up to the U.S. Open. So that's where, as a sponsor, that's where you can kind of cash in. When it was called the Pilot Pen, every time this tournament was mentioned, it was the Pilot Pen, just like the golf
And
tournament.
it's still mentioned. We still say it all the time
Well,
by accident.
Right.
Well, but that's
Yeah.
because
Well,
that was its
you know,
heyday, right?
Old habits die hard, but that's
Well, it was the
is-
Volvo, right?
The Volvo, right?
Okay, and the Pilot Pen. Now we got a bunch of folks in the mix.
Well, you talk to all these Connecticut business people every day.
Well, you know,
Who is
I-
a big company that locally
I
we're
rack
not
my
thinking
brain
about?
all the time, and I think
Get
you know,
Lego in on it.
Well, Lego would be great.
Yeah, that's
It
a
would be
Connecticut
great. And you know
company,
what? I did mention this to Ann many times, all of these different companies, and I'm sure that they've exhausted all of them to figure out how this fits with their mission statement.
Yeah, imagine a
how
little
this-
Lego play center
Right.
outside the tent.
I love
and,
it.
tennis.
and this we did bring this up. So hey,
Who's
Lego.
the dude who's running Lego? What's his name?
Oh, I don't know now. I mean, it could be the same person. I don't know.
Oh, well.
I haven't looked. I haven't Googled it.
I hope you're watching.
Right. But Lego would be great because you start with kids playing young in tennis and you bring them up. And I even said, hey, put a big Lego playground out there and Lego.
How about
right?
Pez?
Pez
All right,
is another
Pez.
good one. Yes.
All right, Timex. We
Timex
got
is a good one.
Timex.
Yes, the Timex
Hey,
Open.
we
the
got a
Timex.
million people, so you know what? Sponsor the thing.
Well, I'd like to see it stay because I enjoy covering the tournament.
Yeah.
It's been a great
It's fun.
event. It's you know, the people who run this tournament, the people who own the tournament, the Buckholzes, they know what they're doing. The guy who is the president of the tournament, Mike Davis, is a longtime tennis pioneer who's in the Tennis Hall of Fame. These are tennis people who know how to put on a tournament. I just think if they can survive this kind of drought that
Yeah.
we're seeing in tennis stardom on the women's side of things, then things will come back. That's my thought.
All
I
right,
agree.
we have the answer. Good.
All right, thanks for tuning in here on SportsEdge.com.